Hi everybody, this is Lainey from Camp Joy Farms. I just had to come outside today on this beautiful afternoon and walk out to my garden. So bad I'm ready for spring to come, just so bad. I've been thinking and planning and I can't wait. I'm hoping and praying that this year my garden will really look like it did in 2020. Here's some pictures to show you some things I was growing in 2020. I grew beans, just so many beans. I loved it. I was even able to grow pumpkins. I think this is the Weeby Littles. And Jubilee watermelons. They came out so good. I was able to grow eggplants and even cantaloupes. I'm not a big cantaloupe lover, but when you grow them yourself, they taste so good. My garden was just such a fun place for me to be in 2020. I had flowers everywhere. I just absolutely loved it. It was so peaceful. I can't wait. I really can't wait for this spring to get my garden growing again. I've missed it so much. Adelaide carrots from Johnny Seeds. Oh, they were good. And more beans, my favorite thing to grow. That was such a good year. I enjoyed gardening so much that year. And I was just able to grow things like watermelons and cantaloupes and things like that that I really had in my mind just thought were so hard to grow. And I just put out seeds. I did run my drip irrigation, so they did get plenty of water, which melons need. And so that helped. But they just grew and they thrived. And I was able to harvest melons and eat them. And I also had some sugar baby watermelons that I grew in my lower garden. And it was just wonderful. And I was so happy to be able to grow things like that never in my wildest dreams I thought I could do that easily. I mean, I figured after a while, if you really got good at it or you really studied it a lot, you could really grow melons and have things like that. But I didn't really understand that I could just put the seeds in the ground and they do all the work. So if you're thinking about growing melons or cantaloupes, Crenshaws, just anything like that, I encourage you to, because if I can do it, you can do it. I want to get started today on just laying some drip irrigation in my upper garden on the 3 rows that I have tilled right now. I did a little video before this cold snap came through, right after I had worked this garden. And so watch that just a moment if you will, and it'll explain to you how I rode this up and what all is going on. I'm going to go ahead and film this today because we have some rain coming in and maybe even some wintry mix, and I just don't know what the next few days are going to be like. I rode up my garden yesterday. I had the organic soil that I spread on it, I believe in my last video, and I went ahead and rode it up. Now you might be looking at this saying, what's going on? What it is this is a row right here, and then I have 2 more rows. What I did was yesterday I actually took a rake and I made a trench down the middle of the row. So it actually looks like 2 bumps there with a little valley in the middle, but that's really 1 row. I took the rake, I made a trench down the middle. I did the same thing with this row, so it looks like 2 bumps. And right here are my aisles in between my rows. Those are aisles, and this is 1 bump, 2 bumps that makes my 1 row with my trench down the middle. I did the same thing here. So my aisle, it's going to be my next aisle when I do the rest of the garden. My bump with the trench down the middle. The reason I did that is because I'm going to be laying my drip tape. So I wanted to go ahead and get that trench put in so that hopefully, I didn't really know this weather was coming. And so I was going to come out here and lay my drip tape and go ahead and hook up these first 3 rows, because I'm going to have, this row is going to be Little Marvel English peas. Well, it's 70 feet. At the other end of my garden down there, at the very end, you'll notice the black organic soil kind of stops, and then past that is just regular soil. That's where I'm going to have just 3 rows of the John Hawk heirloom corn. And I didn't feel the need to put organic soil in where I'm planting corn. I worked on my pH and everything, and the corn normally will grow in regular soil. So I just put the organic soil in with these 3 rows, this 70 foot backwards. It's 70 feet back this way to 0. and I mixed in the organic soil. Now it got churned up a little bit whenever I disked it and whenever I rode it up, but it's fine. It's all mixed in there and everything. I'm gonna run my drip tape though from 0 right here all the way to 96 feet, all the way through the corn. So I'll have these 3 rows. I'm gonna go ahead and hook up so that I can plant my English peas there. This row is going to be carrots. The whole 70 foot of this is going to be carrots. Carota, Envy, Chantenay, I've got Danvers half long, and then if I need to fill out any other spaces, I've got some little half packs of different kinds I'm going to put in there. This row right here is not going to be planted right now. I'm going to go ahead and run the drip tape, but this row right here is going to be some pole beans and lots of tomatoes. I'm going to have lots of tomatoes with post and some Florida weave string systems going through there on this first row. It's not going to be planted until March though, but when you're dealing with a tractor and you're dealing with implements, it was just easier to go ahead and do these first 3 rows. I'm going to come back later and do these last 2 rows, which right now is just soil. I've got to haul in organic soil later for that and then disc it up and all, but I'm trying to let as much organic soil as I can sit in my pile and cook before I bring it over here. Once I bring it, it'll be closer to March, and then I'll incorporate it into this soil and row those up. This is where my black organic soil ends, and then it just turns into my regular soil for my corn for these 3 rows. Looking at the rows from the end, as I said, what I'm doing is I'm pulling the drip tape, I'm going to unroll it and bring each row all the way to the end here, because I do want drip tape on my corn, you know, when it gets started. I'm not planting it until the beginning of April, but I do want drip tape on it at that time, and you have to just unroll it all at one time. But what I'm going to do with the corn is up in those other rows, I'll really pull a lot of that dirt over the drip tape and really, you know, have it covered really good and flatten out those rows so that it's easy to plant in. But in my corn, I'm gonna run my drip tape down the middle of the row, and then I'm just gonna pull a little of the dirt over from like one side and top it off. I wanna leave dirt on either side. I don't necessarily care if I have this beautiful flat row to plant my corn in. I want to leave some dirt on either side, because as the corn starts growing, you have to hill it up. And I need that spare dirt there to really be able to pull a rake on and hill that corn up as it starts to grow. So I won't bury this drip tape as deep. You have to bury it enough to hold it down, but I do want to leave some dirt on the sides there. So that helped explain that. What I'm going to do today is I'm going to lay my drip hoses down these 3 rows. I'm going to partially cover it up at the beginning to kind of weight it down, and then I'll be able to kind of unroll it. I'm going ahead and getting these 3 rows ready because I'm going to be planting things on them soon. Now, I'm not going to use the drip irrigation right off the bat, but I want to go ahead and have it laid. When I plant my carrots, for a while there, it'll just take a while for them to germinate. I'll have to keep the topsoil watered. But after a while, when the carrots get going, when they're setting roots and things like that, then I'll kind of initiate that drip irrigation. Also, I'll need it on the peas once they get going. But right now, I just want to get it in the ground, covered up with dirt, and I'm not even really connecting anything yet. I've got some other work to do out here with the tractor, so I'm not wanting to connect all the lines yet. Right now, I just want to get those first 3 rows lines laid down, because I'm fixing to start planting carrots here before too long. My goal is to plant my carrots by, I think I had on there February 1st or February 15th, somewhere around in there. I'm going to watch the weather. So, you know, things are kind of fluid, it changes. But somewhere up in there, I'm going to go ahead and plant my first succession of carrots. Go ahead and get some in the ground. And I'm hoping they germinate. I'm going to really take care of that and watch them good. And then after that, maybe each week I'll plant about 5 or 6 more feet of carrots until I have a pretty good succession. We can't let carrots go too long around here because it gets so hot, and some of the carrots take, you know, 70, 75 days. So I've had to do a lot of thinking and all and planning on which varieties to plant first, and just really to try to cover my bases so that I don't end up with a carrot that's 85 days that doesn't go in until the last succession, things like that. You really have to think about all that stuff. Anyway, that's what I'm going to do. If you want to watch me, Well, that's how I did one row. I won't bore you with watching me do all three. But basically, you just roll your tape out. You try to keep your little slits in the tape facing up. It's really important that you kind of walk along it and make sure it didn't twist over. You face them up because that's where your water comes out. You don't want your water going straight into the ground. You want it coming up and spreading out in your row. I'm going to come back in a little while and make them look all pretty and everything, but I just wanted to give you the gist of what I'm doing. About the only thing I can get done right now in this weather, but I'm getting ready, fixing to start planting soon, so I'm so happy. Another thing I wanted to talk about today is I think I've reversed my other decision, and I am going to get some heat mats. I wasn't going to do it, but I have figured out that they may just pay for themselves for me. And I don't mean in a way of, saving money by not buying plant starts. That's always a given, that you can save money starting your own plants at home. But for me, it's actually a more practical consideration, and that is the cost of propane. And what do I mean by that? Well, our tank ran low on propane, which it does. A couple of times a year we have to get it filled up with propane. The propane that we get supplies our gas ventless fireplace, our heater, our tankless hot water heater that does the hot water throughout our house, and my stove. Those four things. Well, just using our stove and our tankless hot water heater does not use a lot of propane. Thank goodness, because I do use my stove every day and we're always using hot water. Thank goodness those two things barely move the needle on my propane tank. I have just learned since we built this house and moved in that the fireplace really uses it bad. You can just almost watch the dial go down when you turn on that fireplace and use the propane to run it. It's nice, it looks pretty, and when we turn it on, yes, it will heat up our whole downstairs of our house pretty quickly, but it also will dial down your propane in 2 seconds, and it's just not worth it. So we really don't use our fireplace that often for that reason. But the other day when I got my propane delivered, for different reasons, I called them a little earlier than I normally call them. I normally wait till it gets down to 20%, but they had sent out an email saying they were running behind to deliver things. So to not wait till it got low, to go ahead and call them at least 30%. So that's what I did. I called them when it was like 32%. And I'm glad I did, because it took them 11 days to get to my house to bring me some propane. By that point, it wasn't down to 20, but it was just a little above 20. So I had not ordered as many gallons of propane because I was at 30% and not 20. So they put 100 gallons in my tank. It bumped it to 75%. Well, right after that, we had a cold snap come through Louisiana, or the South, the whole South. And I had to run the heater during the weekend. Well, I chose to run it because the temperatures got down into the 20s. So even though we had extra blankets on us at night and things like that, the house was still getting really cold. I didn't even run it very high. I had it on like 71, and I guess it did cut on a little more than it needed to, a lot, because the outdoor temperature was in the 20s. So it probably stayed, cut on more than I realized. And I went out to check it after a few days, and it had went down like 10 points already, just from one weekend's worth of running the heater. And I was like, man. So I dialed it back, and I dialed it back to where, either I cut it off, especially as it warmed up during the day, or I only cut it on about like 66 or 67 so that it was rarely cutting on. The temperatures have moderated somewhat now. So right now I just have the heater cut off, but I went back out there after the days this week. It's right now at like 55, 54, something like that. So it's really going down by turning that heater on. Now, what does this have to do with my garden? I was kind of depending on keeping my house at a decent temperature, 70 or above. We never have it very hot in our house, but I was thinking if I kept it about 72, 73, something like that, that plus the grow lights and plus me putting the shelf by the most lit window in my house, it would be right up against that, and it's got lots of light. I thought that all that combined, I could probably go ahead and germinate my plants. However, with me cutting my heater off completely, and I'm going to do that, I'm cutting it off, I'm not running it. I don't want to have to get down back to where I'm toward 30 and 20 within a month. It cost me over $400 to have that propane delivered to my house. I don't want to turn around 2 months later and have a $400 propane bill, and then turn around some point later in the year and have another propane bill way before Christmas. So I'm just cutting the heater off. If it gets a crazy cold snap coming through, of course I'll have to turn it back on. But right now I'm cutting it off. The way I'm looking at it is, if I really wanted to not get the heat mats and use the ambient temperature of my house, and use even saran wrap if I needed to, or the grow lights to help, and the window lights, even with all that, I don't know if it, since the temperature is seeming to stay kind of down. I mean, it's chilly. I've got a sweatshirt on today. It's still kind of chilly. And then when you walk in my house, you're definitely not walking into a big heated house. It's still kind of chilly in the house. Since it's like that, I just don't know that I can get germination on all the trays that I have going. And I don't want to take a chance of not being able to grow some of these varieties that I've chosen, these heirloom varieties, especially for tomatoes and things. I don't want to take a chance of not being able to grow those and use my seeds. I can go get Cherokee Purple tomatoes at our nursery, at the hardware store where I normally get them. They do sell Cherokee Purple variety. But a lot of the other varieties that I want to grow, they don't sell. And I want to grow the ones that I have seeds for. So I think that I have figured out the balance. If I run my heater and I keep my house enough to germinate those plants, it's going to cost me bucks. If I keep my heat down and just get the heat mats, it's still going to cost me bucks to get the heat mats, but it averages out, and at the end of the day, I have heat mats. At the end of the day of keeping my temperature up in my house, I just have another propane bill, and it's time to refill the tank again. So that's the way I'm looking at things. I don't mind spending the money. I wanted heat mats, but I just thought, let me see if I can do it without it. But I just don't think that it's worth burning up that propane and having that truck come back out here with a $400 load within a month and a half, just so I can keep my house as warm as it needs to germinate those plants. So that's my thinking. Put in the comments if you have any thoughts about that. There's lots of different ways to do things. Some people can just put them in a kitchen window and germinate plants. I just don't have that kind of light in my kitchen to just throw a lot of things around on my kitchen cabinets. I have that one window in my bedroom where this shelf is going to go. But my bedroom is also just in a colder area of my house. So I'm having to balance it all out. I'm thinking it out even as I speak. So if you have any ideas for me, please let me know, and I'd appreciate it. Anyway, this is Lainey from Camp Joy Farms. I just wanted to get out here today and do what little I could in my garden, just lay this drip tape and then discuss the seed trays with you. I'd appreciate any input you have. Just let me know. Thank you so much for watching my channel. Please subscribe and hit the notifications to let you know when I post a new video. I appreciate it. Bye-bye.